Hey guys, I have an amazing guest who's got full of energy and he's out there visible with influence, authority. He is a peak performance and marketing coach and virtual summit machine. Is Jay Williams. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Lindsay. It's lovely to be here and to talk about this topic today.
Yeah, so you've had done so many summits. I was so grateful to be involved with your influence mastery summit. You've done like a couple of AI ones, if I remember correctly. What got you started creating all of these summits?
Yeah, so for me, I've been in marketing for about 10 years now. I've been in business for over 10 years. And one of the biggest challenges I've faced consistently is having a big enough audience. And I've always found that I've been the type of guy that's jumped to step 3 and 4 and 5 before I've really done step 1 and 2. And I think a fundamental part of every business is having people to talk to, right? Conversations build businesses. And unfortunately, what I see in the marketplace so much is that people just don't have the audience. And for me, I was at a place probably just over 12 months ago where I'd built an audience to a degree, and I got my business to over 6 figures. And I was at a place where I was kind of ready to take that next step. I was like, 2023, I'm really going to take it to the next level. I want to build bigger group coaching programs. I want to have bigger influence. I want to have a bigger impact. And at the time I thought, hey, virtual summits would be a really good strategy to do. But I wasn't fully committed at the time. I was just like, oh, I've done a virtual summit in the past and it didn't really get me the results, and it does take work, and all of this was going through my mind. And then one day I woke up to a message from my assistant, which said, Jay, I can't get in your Facebook. What do you mean can't get in my Facebook? Well, it says that your account's been suspended. At the time, I had probably about 7,000 people on my Facebook. That's where I was generating all of my leads. It was where I was generating all of my revenue. And literally overnight, Facebook shut down my ability to earn money.
Oh,
And I probably lost in the region, just rough projections, because I was nurturing people and building relationships, probably in the region of about 150 to 200,000 pounds that was
totally.
left on the table there. And that was probably just the beginning of it.
Ooh.
And me being the optimist, I thought, hey, I tell you what, I'm just going to review. I'm just going to review and appeal this whole thing. It's clearly some misunderstanding.
Yeah,
And Mr. Facebook will give me back my account. This is
they're
all I'm
so
going to do.
helpful.
Oh, really helpful. And so I send off this wonderful, pleasant email, being British, and I get a response back which says, Mr. Williams, we've reviewed your case, and unfortunately, we're not going to be reinstating your account. Please do not reply to this email. Our decision is final.
Ooh.
And in that moment, I had the thought and the feeling of, oh shit,
Yeah.
because now I was presented with no network, really. I didn't get all of these people onto my email list. That was the first mistake I made. And the second thing I did was I relied on someone else's platform and my ability to generate income by putting it in the hands of somebody else. And for me, I was presented with a situation where I didn't have the network, didn't have all the contacts, didn't have them on my email list. And so I needed to make a decision. And the decision I made is, I know I'm going to do 12 months of summits. I'm going to commit to this strategy, and I'm going to do it consistently. And for me, I started off with my first summit, which was the Unstoppable Entrepreneur. Now, just to give people a little bit of context, I did my first ever summit just over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I reached out to over 500 speakers, authors, and coaches to try and get them to come and speak on my stage. 13 people decided to say yes to me, and I generated 113 leads and 0 sales. This year, I've run consistent summits and I've generated list builds of 1,500 to 2,000 people. I've also generated sales on average between 10 to 15,000. That's just on the front end
Yeah,
of the summit.
that's
So
amazing.
that's how I've been able, that's how I got into summits and some of the results I've been able to create this year, including having guests like the #1 marketer in the world, Neil Patel,
Yeah.
as well as a bunch of incredibly high level, highly successful experts in their field speak on my stage.
I love that. And kudos to you for just honestly persevering, finding another way and just building upon it and learning from it. Some people would just like quit or completely pivot.
Yeah.
So I love that you've had that success and so quickly, really, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to sit here and say it hasn't come with its
Oh,
challenges, because
right. Absolutely.
that's never the case. At the same time, though, I think that the thing that separates me from most people is I was committed.
Yeah.
And by committed, I say I wasn't willing to just go, oh, I'm going to do one summit and hopefully it works. And I wasn't going to do one social media post or send one email. Like, I was committed to the process. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I've learned that's helped me to be a lot more consistent, a lot more focused, is by asking myself the question when I'm evaluating any kind of strategy: can I commit to this for at least 12 months?
Yeah.
And by
That's
doing that, it
super
gets me
smart.
to think longer, but it also gets me to plan longer instead of operating from what most people operate out of. And that's what I call hope marketing. Hope that I just do a bit and all of a sudden it's going to be raining
Right.
money and I'm going to crush. Well, that's complete BS. It never happens, as you know. It's never an overnight success. It's the
I know.
iceberg effect.
And you got to put the work in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you do. And here's the thing, Lindsay, I've never found a strategy, never, ever, 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 and I've pretty much done everything that hasn't required a lot of work.
Right.
It just
I know.
hasn't.
No.
And this is a strategy just like any other. It takes work. But if you're committed, then you can create extraordinary results.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been able to do this year.
I love it. And I feel like when you are a podcast host, you obviously have a platform, you're building your authority, you're making a ton of amazing connections.
Mm.
Um, and having a virtual summit to even kind of like stake your flag in the ground and like, say that you're an industry leader, it feels like an easy segue to like you have so many guests that you've had on your show that you could invite on your summit. I just think that would be a super smart strategy. Have you seen that like done, or is that like a starting place for you, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the places I look for speakers is actually on podcasts, because
Yeah.
there's certain criteria that I look for in a speaker before I even invite them to get on my stage. So I go to podcasts like yours and other people's, and I look, who are the speakers? What are they
Mhm.
speaking on? Does this tie into my virtual event? And the beautiful thing about, if you have your own podcast as an example, is the thing that takes the most time when you're building out a summit is finding great speakers. It really is.
Yeah.
And the second part of that is finding speakers that are willing to promote. Now, if you're a podcast host and you bring on a guest, what makes a great guest, is someone who doesn't only do a good job on the podcast, but is actually going to promote it and share
Mhm.
it with their network as well. And you get to see the data, you get to see the stats of what they did or didn't do. And one of the tough things about picking speakers is knowing whether they are willing to promote your event.
So true.
And there are many people, I've had times where I kicked 5 speakers off the week before a summit, one the day before, and replaced them all
Good
just
for
because they
you.
didn't have integrity. And I'm sure it's the same for you and your podcast and
Yeah.
your listeners, that you want people who are actually going to be excited, who are willing to promote your podcast or your
Yeah.
event, not just people who are like, hey, I'm just all about take. Yeah, I'm on your show, I'm doing a great job, and look at me. Like, people who are committed to shared success and contributing to other people's success, not just feeding their own bank accounts,
Their
so
own
to speak.
goals. Yeah. Absolutely. And for me, it's like that's the beauty of it, right? And having summits and that engagement that you have with your guests, your speakers, like you're fostering those collaborations and relationships. It could put your foot into doors of other opportunities. Like there's so many more benefits than just that summit. And you want to be able to create great content and great resources for your audience. Hopefully you have that drive to serve people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the beauty of the summit model for someone who's a podcaster, for example, is you could take the interviews that you've done in the podcast and you could repurpose them on your podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there's so many benefits to it in terms of, yes, you have the speakers. Yes, you've got a good
Mhm.
idea who promotes you. Yes, you see who is actually a really competent speaker and aligns to your values, because that's really important. And also you can take what they're doing and you can repurpose that
Yeah.
on your podcast. And there's just so many benefits. And then on top of that, for example, this episode we're shooting right now really came out of you being on my summit.
Yeah.
You didn't know me before you came on my summit, and you're like, hey, I've got a podcast. Do you want to come and speak on it? Awesome. Absolutely. And that's the secondary benefits that you get from hosting your own
Mhm.
stage. You build relationships, you build a network that is constantly creating opportunities. So, for example, recently I was invited to come and do a joint venture with someone who'd been a speaker on one of my stages, and this individual wants to do a challenge with me in a
Hey.
joint venture where he puts me in front of 2,500 of his high-paying clients.
Sweet.
So those are just some of the opportunities you
Yeah.
get. You get to go and speak on podcasts. People want to put you on their stages, and just the relationships that you create. And I think that's probably something to get across. And I'm sure you get it, Lindsay, that for me, it's not just all about, oh, let's get the money, let's get the money, let's get the money. Like for me, I'm about people first. I'm
Yeah.
about, let's build a relationship. Whereas many people just think very short term. They don't nurture any relationships. They just like, hey, yeah,
Transactional.
I've got you on the summit. Like, thanks very much. Used and abused your email list. We're done.
Yeah.
And so it's a slightly different approach that I tend to take.
It is. And I gravitate towards people that I feel like are authentic, serving, like honestly, someone that I would love to have a beer with or a coffee with.
Yeah, yeah.
And you were one of them.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So let's dive into kind of like the nitty gritty. Like, how do you know when you're ready to like, oh, now is the right time for me to create a virtual summit?
Yeah, good question. So the honest answer is that it doesn't matter whether you are starting out or if you're an established business, a summit can be a
Yeah.
really valuable tool. Now, I say this because think about this. If you're starting out and you don't have an audience, you can leverage other people's audiences to actually build your own list. So just to give you an overview of the summit, you build a stage, you say, I'm putting on this amazing virtual summit. You go out to the speakers, you say, hey, do you have a network and a list of people that you can invite to this event? If you do that, I'll put you on my stage. You put 12 or 21 speakers on a stage. They all promote to their network. There's a massive surge of people who come and sign up on your registration page. And you now have an email list of your ideal clients, the types of people that have the problems that you actually solve. So if you're starting out and you're in the early days of business, this is a great way to build your list.
Mhm.
Now, many people in the early stages of business don't have a message to market fit, right? They don't. There's a disconnect. And so one of the joys of having an email list is you can actually survey that email list. I remember I had an email list of, I think it was about 300 or 400 people. And people would tell me all the time, Jay, go and survey your list. Jay, go and survey your list. Find out what's the challenges they're facing. What do they need help with right now? And give them that. I'm like, brilliant. Okay. So I send the survey out and I'm trying to incentivize them with
Yeah.
Amazon vouchers. And I get like 2 responses. I'm like, this is a bit deflating. And it was really annoying.
Yeah.
Now, contrast that to I'll send a response out, a survey out now, and I'll get 180 responses. And that gives me the data to make
Yeah.
better decisions, to make better offers. And it gives me a better understanding of my target market's needs and desires. And so from there, I can refine my position. I can refine my offer so that when I'm putting stuff in front of them, it's exactly what they need. And there's a great quote from a guy, I think it's called Keith Cunningham, and he said, the secret to business is simple. Find out what people want, go out and get it, and give it them.
Yeah.
And that's why it's ideal for people in the early stage of business. Now, if you're like me and you're at 6 figures and you want to get to the next level, well, people can build summit lists of 10, 15,000 at a time. Now, that's a slightly different way to do it, but it's the same fundamental principles. It just means that you need someone in your network, or you need to get what we call a whale or two. Someone with a big, big email list who's on board with your vision of what you're trying to create. And when you get them in, that's when you can build bigger email lists as a result. And so it works at pretty much every stage of the business. It just depends on what your goals are.
That makes total sense. Now, from back then to now, you obviously learned lessons along the way and have improved things. Thank goodness. What do you wish you knew when you started?
What do I wish I knew when I started? I wish I knew the direct correlation and how significant the direct correlation was between number of leads and number of sales. Now, that might sound overly simplistic and blatantly obvious, but just like I'm sure your audience has experienced before, sometimes you need to hear things a few times, or you need to have a bit more pain before you take the lesson. And for me, I can see a very clear correlation between number of leads versus number of sales. And it's literally predictable. I can tell you that if you put X amount of leads in this funnel with this offer, you'll make this amount of money. And I've seen it time and time again. The pattern is very clear. And for me, the second thing I'd probably say I wish I knew is that I do have permission to actually kick speakers off and confront speakers when they're not doing what they say they're going to do. See, for me, when I first built out the summits, it was like, whoa, I'm getting all these, like, I mean, top speakers, people who've shared the stage with like Tony Robbins and all these unbelievable people speaking on my stage. And there was this part of me that was kind of like, oh, you know, they're doing me a favor. Who am I to call them out for not promoting to them? Who am I to like challenge them? And I felt a little bit of inferiority there and a little bit of fear, which stopped me from really pushing people. And the result was I didn't get the list build that I wanted. And that translated into lower sales, and you know how that goes, and you put a lot of work into this stuff and you want to get rewarded for it. And so yeah, those are the kind of 2 biggest lessons that I wish I knew in the beginning. I wish I'd have been, you know, harder on, because yeah, but it's all hindsight, right? And it's all the lessons you learn.
There's never a path where you don't learn lessons and wish you had known something back then. It's all part and parcel of the process, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so how does someone get started? Like, what are the first couple of steps to create that virtual summit?
Yeah, so I follow something that I've created called the SPEAR method. Now,
Hmm.
the SPEAR method is, it starts with S, quite simply, is strategy, right?
Yeah.
Strategy, and this is what's going to make or break your summit. So the first thing you need to look at within strategy is who's your target market, right? Who is it you want to serve? Now, naturally, as a business owner, you're probably going to have a good idea of who it is you specifically serve. So if you are clear on that, the next thing we need to ask ourselves is, okay, what do I want the theme of the summit to be about? So for example, if I work with, if I'm a dating coach and I work with singles, then I need to create a theme, which is probably around dating for, like, let's just say dating for entrepreneurs. Let's just say that as an audience. So I might go, okay, you know what? I want to, the theme is going to be about dating for entrepreneurs. Now, there's another step to that where you need to then come up with a title. Now, you might say, okay, that's a really good title. Well, what makes a great title is it talks to the end result that people want. And if
Hmm.
you can, it extracts the target market as well, so that when people see it, it slaps them in the face and they know this is for me. The second thing we do is once we've got a general theme and we've put together a title, and I use AI to help with this. I've actually
Nice.
got a GPT. For those who don't know what that is, it's basically a tool that AI, ChatGPT has allowed you to create, which do specific roles. And I use this to help with strategy, and I've trained it and programmed it myself. So it
Nice.
literally does what I take clients through normally in this
That's so
process.
cool.
So the next part that we need to look at is what's the overall promise, and this is the biggie. This will be the thing that um, decides whether people, when they visit your landing page or opt-in page, whether they enter their name and email address or they don't.
Yeah.
And this is where we want to create something that really talks to the end result that people want. And this is why it's so important to really understand your messaging in your existing business and understanding your target market. This is where surveying might come in,
Yeah.
once you have a list, or just going out and asking people before you have a list. So that's really the first part of getting started, is getting the strategy right and setting yourself up for success. Now, there's lots of other things that come with that. For example, okay, what's the minimum criteria for all of my speakers? So when I'm thinking about speakers, there are four things I typically think about. The first one is competence. So of course, I want people who
Yeah.
are competent, who know what they're talking about, who know their topic inside out. So my minimum criteria typically is people who are at multiple six, 7 or 8 figure entrepreneurs. That's who my criteria is now. In the beginning, I was a little bit more like, oh yeah, like I just want to get it going and like I want to get some results. But now I've really refined, and I just go, look, you do not speak on my stage unless you're doing at least 6 or multiple 6, 7 or 8 figures in your business. The second thing I look at is what's the list size?
Yeah.
Like for me, the minimum criteria for a list size is 5,000. Now, you can go to 2,000, you could go to 2,500. There's lots of different options here. But typically, what I recommend to people is if you want to build a decent sized list, you really need to have
You need the
someone
numbers.
who has a list of 5,000 or more. The third thing I really look for in a speaker is values. So do they align to my values? Because it's really important that they align to where you're going in your vision, and they are the types of people that you enjoy being around, right? You
Totally.
said before, I like to hang around with people who uh, I'd be happy to go for a beer with, right? And
Yeah.
it's the same sort of thing, because this is a long-term thing. It's forming relationships with these people. And the fourth thing I normally focus on is, do they have integrity? Do they do what they say they're
Hmm.
going to do? And many people, believe it or not, and this might be confronting for some of your listeners, they don't do what they say they're
I
going to do.
know.
And here's the thing, it's not necessarily that you need to be perfect. Everybody's human. Everybody's late every now and then. Everybody makes a mistake. Everybody, like, there's breakdowns, right? But the important thing for me is not like that you have breakdowns. It's more about how you respond to it. So, for
Do you make it
example,
right?
I've had speakers who, on the day of the summit, have said to me, I followed up with, I've been ringing them, I've been messaging them, trying to get a hold of them, first of all, to make sure
Yeah.
they're okay and that they can still speak and it's not going to be a problem. And then second of all, find out what's going on with their promotional efforts, because I'm not seeing anything on the stats. And I've rang people on the day and they've turned around to me and said, oh my God, Jay, I'm so sorry. My team hasn't been promoting any of the events I've been speaking at for over a month. And they tell me this whole freaking drama, right? And then I say, okay, I get it. That happens. So what can you do? Honestly, Jay, there's nothing I can do. Like, I get it if you want to kick me off the summit, blah, 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 all of this sort of stuff. So that's an example of how not to respond versus
Yeah.
some people that I rang up and spoke to, and they've gone, oh my word, Jay, right, I'm getting on this right now. There's been some kind of breakdown. I'm speaking to my team, and then they update me and they say, look, the email's going out at 4 p.m. It's done. And then I see the numbers and it happens. And it's really about that. How did they
Absolutely.
respond to that, rather than feeding you the whole drama? Like, you don't want to
Oh,
hear it. You're already trying to
right.
put
You
together
got
this
enough going
event
on, man.
and managing people, and you just want people to just be honest with you. Don't
Yeah.
give you all of the
Agreed.
drama and the story that they want to tell you. So yeah, there's picking, like, highlighting your criteria for your speakers is going to be really
Yeah.
important before you move to the next bit, which is identifying the topics that you want to cover in the summit. And again, I use AI for this. It can highlight them all for me. It can create loads of the promotional posts. It could do loads of stuff. That's why I'm big into running AI summits, because I'm a
Saw that.
bit of a fan of it.
It is, and it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely is.
I love that. That was super helpful. Now, what do you think about where people you have to pay to be in a summit? Like, I see that a ton, and there's
Yeah.
different tiers. When do you kind of instill that in your strategy, or like, should you have it at free at first, or are you starting to have people pay to be a part of the summit?
Yeah, so I've thought about this, to be honest with you. And I've spoken to a few speakers about whether or not they do it. Now,
Yeah.
there's kind of two sides to it, really. As I already alluded to, there's plenty of people that say they're going to do something, but don't do it. And having the paid option creates skin in the game.
True,
Now,
true.
if I was going to do it, I would probably say, hey, you can pay to be a speaker at my event. I'm going to take a refundable amount. So you pay me $200. And as long as you bring in X amount of people, 50 people, I'll just refund you the money. And the thing that I like about that is it creates skin in the game for both people. It's not just, hey, I'm putting you on my stage in the hope that you will promote
Yeah.
the event. Because as the summit host, you do take the risk, right? You do take the risk.
And spend the money with all the promo and your
Exactly,
team
right?
and
And so it's about lowering that risk. So from my perspective, it's a strategy that people do actually use,
yeah.
and it can be really valuable. It really depends on, you have to also know that you're going to limit the amount of people
Yeah.
that are going to be willing to partake in that, because quite often I find you're dealing with a lot of, let's say, ego
I
in the
know, right?
speakers. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't have a little bit of an ego, because I do. I absolutely do. And I love being on stage, and no speaker wants to look bad. No speaker wants to be insulted. And so when you say to people, hey, I don't really trust you, I'm going to get you to charge money. I'm going to charge you money. Then they normally get their backs up a little bit. And
Or
so
bad
for
taste in your
me,
mouth.
I've got no intention of introducing that at this stage, just purely because I would rather be very picky about who I put on the
Yeah.
stage. And then from there, nurture those relationships, because again, I'm playing the long game,
Yeah.
and
I love that.
that's just kind of my take on it.
And I've never seen where it's like, oh, if you fulfill on this, that, and the other, and
Yeah.
bringing these leads, that the refund. I've never
Hmm.
actually seen that play out.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting concept for sure.
Yeah. I mean, if it's like, again, we know that being on a stage creates authority and
Yeah.
credibility. So depending on how much they're asking, it's often a really good move to pay to get on a stage. It is, right? Or
Yeah. It's
having
usually like
something of
100 to
value.
250. It's not like you're gonna break the bank or anything.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, if I was giving anyone any advice about that kind of thing, it would really be um, to make sure you drill the host on who are the other speakers, who are their target
Yes.
market, what are they talking about, right? Because the last thing you want is, I see this all the time. People put on events where they try and please everybody, and they're like, oh, I've got a speaker for mindset, I've got a speaker for health, I've got a speaker for business, like, and it's too broad and ambiguous,
Very.
right? So you never want to be on that event as a speaker, especially paying, probably not even free. And then on top of that, who are the target market? Who are the other speakers? Who are their
Mhm.
target market? Because let's just say, and there's a big difference, right, between you've got 10 speakers that all serve people at 6 figures and above, and you serve people doing less than 6 figures. Well, not even that's going to be a fit. So if it was me, I'd really drill the summit host on the other speakers and their target market as well, and do your due diligence before committing
Mhm.
to anything. Because from my experience, and I haven't done a lot of virtual summits, but what people have told me is that they don't actually produce a very good return for the speakers. And I honestly think that comes down to like the host and how well they've structured that summit. So, for example, I've got a
Mm.
new event coming out in February next year, and it's called AI for Impact. It's literally going to be just for people who serve coaches, authors, and speakers.
Right.
So every single speaker I'll have handpicked, and they will be talking to that target market. So every single speaker that comes and speaks will be talking directly to their target market, and it will be people who are doing less than 6 figures in their business. And I'll be fully transparent with that with every single one of my
Yeah.
speakers. And then they can make a decision of whether or not it's right or not for them.
I love that. I love that you're very focused not only on your goals, but the concept, the audience, because the guests need to know all that to know if it's
Yeah.
a right pick. People aren't going to say yes to a summit just because you ask them. It has to be a win-win for both.
Yeah.
And for the audience, if they're wanting to attend, they need to see that all of the topics, all of the guests, that it pertains to them, it speaks to them, it's going to help to them. All those pieces have to be aligned. So that makes total sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And the first thing I'm always looking at is what's the experience I'm creating. Many people are like, and you need to cover this in strategy, like how many leads do you want to
Yeah.
generate? How much money do you want to um, generate? And I operate what I call a good, better, and best model. Have you ever heard that
Yeah.
before? So that's what I normally use when I'm trying to evaluate my goals for the summit. Um, so I completely lost my trail of thought for a second.
That happens.
I started thinking about good, better, and best scenarios. What was the question again?
Just making sure that everything's aligned, like
Oh
the
yeah,
focus,
experience. Yeah,
the
so
experience. Yeah.
experience. I always start with experience. Like many people don't think about the actual experience. So, for example,
True.
they are so focused on making money and generating leads that they forget to think about putting breaks in for the audience. And
Right.
what happens is the experience is poor because they're trying to ram as many speakers in
Mhm.
a congested period of time, and the whole audience is overwhelmed. It's like fire hose
Yeah.
central. And what happens is those people don't necessarily walk away with a really good feeling. In fact, some of them are quite frustrated, overwhelmed, annoyed. Whereas, and to an extent, a summit is a little bit of that, which is where people go to the coach or the person speaking and they get the additional support that they need. I think, though, and I learned this in being a professional DJ, that you need to take people on a journey, even to the point of it's important who you pick as your first speaker. It's important who you pick as a speaker before you break and after you break. It's important about the sequence of speakers, and do you build in any exercises? Do you do anything like that? Because ultimately, I remember when I first got into DJing, I played electro and progressive house, and it was just about how loud and how hard hitting can you get it, and it was just like pump pump pump, right, blowing people's eardrums out. That was the intention for me. And I realized that if you were just playing banger after banger after banger, like, people were exhausted, and it took away from the times where you had a really good song. I'm sure you've been to a nightclub or a bar or something before, or heard your favorite song come on, and you're like, woo, it's so loud,
You're
right?
giving
And
her.
you're all over it, right? So in DJing, you want to take people up a little bit and then take them down and level out, and then take them a little bit higher and then give them a little bit of a break and then build them up
Absolutely.
again. And so that's kind of the journey you want to take people on with the
Yeah.
virtual summits as well. And on top of that, one of the things I do in my virtual summits is I actually increase the price prior to the summit. So I basically say, we're starting in 4 hours. The price is now, in this example, $67 to get, let's say, a VIP offering. And then what I do on the summit is, because I know there'll be a percentage of people that will have resisted buying because they want to try before they buy, right? I will say to them, look, I know many of you do want to try before you buy. So here's what I'm willing to do. I'm going to give you to the end of the second speaker to upgrade, and I'm going to do it and honor it for the $47 price tag instead of the $67, which it's currently at. And if you upgrade before then, you'll get it $47. After that, it's going to be $67. And that puts a significant emphasis on having two really good speakers in the beginning.
True.
Because if you get that wrong, then sales just go off a cliff, right? It doesn't work the way you want it. So there's all of these nuanced things that people may not be aware about, that just
you don't think of
helps
it.
with sales, helps with the experience. And yeah, there's a lot of thought that's gone into it.
I love it. And what I love is that now this is actually in your business model. People started to come to you saying, Jay, you're rocking it. Can you help me? So now you're actually helping people create summits.
Yeah, absolutely. People were coming to me going like, how are you doing this? I've got interest in running a virtual summit. Like, how are you getting all these people in a room, and how are you getting these top people? And so people started asking me, like, can you teach me? Can you show me how to do it? And it really started with one individual who was really like an OG, right? She was someone she's been in marketing for 30 years, and she had never run the virtual model, and she wanted to have a go at it. And so I taught her the process and run her through it, and we got some good results. And now she's actually my partner. Like, I partnered with her on another venture, which is amazing. And of course, taking her through the process has helped me to just refine it and tweak it, because it's all in my head, a lot of it. And now it's out in a process with templates and checklists and even template graphics, template funnels. And I'm integrating AI into it so that people can just make it so much quicker. And yeah, now I'm teaching people how to actually do it for themselves. And my main promise is I'll help you to add 1,000 leads to your email list in the next 90 days.
Ooh, that's good. Isn't going through that process of like documenting and template procedures, it sucks when you're in it, but when you're done, it's like, And you're like, oh, like it just,
Yeah.
I'm sure has made you helping others do it so much easier.
Oh, 100%. I'm glad you said it because it sucked. And I'm not a details guy. I'm more of a vision guy
Yeah.
and a strategy and let's go, let's drive this baby forward. And I don't tend to get too intimate or bogged down with too much detail. And so sitting down and extracting it out of my brain with my operations manager,
Ew.
and it was intense. The good news is that, of course, creating templates, creating
Mm-hmm.
checklists, creating scripts for the calls that people have, the
Yeah.
interviews, in terms of structure. It just allows you to plug the holes in your process
That
as
too.
well,
It's gold.
and build new tools and new things that can really make everything run so much
Yeah.
smoother. So, for example, I used to my first ever summit I built out. It took me I think it took me about 4 or 5 months. That was, a couple of years ago. And, now because I have this process down and
Mm-hmm.
templated out, I'm building summits in 5, 6 weeks.
That's awesome.
And next year, I'm gonna be running a summit a month.
What?
Yeah.
That's ambitious, Jay.
Yeah, I've got it down.
Yeah.
I can do it. I know I can do it. Because here's the other thing that comes into this, right? So I'm a high performance coach. That's my bread and butter. That's what I love to do. And the thing that gets in the way for most people is themselves. And so what's unique about this is I always say that the problem is one of three things. It's either process, strategy, tactics, it's person, or if you're really unfortunate, it's a combination of both. And for me, I know the thing that is going to lead to you getting results or not is your own thinking and your
Mm-hmm.
ability to get yourself to lead the strategy, to get yourself to execute on the strategy. So many people say to me, Jay, I've got a problem with consistency. I've got no structure, I've got no focus. Summits focus you. And here's why they focus you.
Mm.
Because when you pick a date, when you commit to a date and you get your first speaker, there is accountability.
Ain't
Yeah.
that the truth?
When you've got 15, 20 speakers on your summit and they're all asking you for information or like they're expecting something to
Yeah.
happen, there's a lot of accountability. So it creates a tremendous amount of focus within you.
Yeah.
And you literally have no choice
You're forced to figure it out.
but to do the event or have a massive ego death.
Yeah.
Right. You literally have to go there. And
Yeah.
so that's one of the reasons I really like them. And that's normally what gets in the way for most people is it's a breakdown in their own personal thinking and their
Mm-hmm.
ability to lead their emotions and lead themselves to a specific result and finish, because most people aren't very good finishers. They're great starters, but not very good
Uh-huh.
finishers. And um, that's where I offer something quite unique to most people in the
Yeah.
marketplace, in that I am highly skilled as a high performance coach and I can literally deal with any emotion, any block, but I can also do process very well as well in terms of marketing strategy and tactics.
That's awesome. You're the whole package, Jay.
I can't help
That
it.
should be your tagline.
Please tell my wife that I have the whole package. Yeah.
That's awesome. How can people like do you, I don't know if you have like a sales page on how do people can reach out to you to get that help creating a summit. And I also think you said you had a master class coming up as well.
Yeah, so I have a masterclass called How to Consistently Add 1,000 to 1,500 plus highly qualified leads to your list using virtual summits.
Nice.
I'll provide you with the link to
Yeah.
that. The masterclass is actually going live this evening, but
Woohoo.
people can actually access the replay as
Yeah.
well. And just full transparency, I'd encourage you to go and watch that masterclass to get a full gauge on whether summits is right for you.
Good.
And then at the end of it, I will offer a call where we can actually discuss your summit, your strategy, your tagline, your promise to make sure you set up for success. And of course, some people will go, Jay, I'm not doing this on my own and I want you to
Uh-huh.
help me, which we can definitely have a conversation about.
That's awesome. Yeah, because it can feel super overwhelming when you're already
Yeah.
running a podcast, you're already running your business, and the thought of like
Yeah.
adding another piece onto the puzzle that you've never done before. And I've seen people try it and flop tremendously.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend getting the support that Jay is offering you to kickstart your own virtual summit so you can boost your authority and influence even more. You have
Yes.
given so much advice and insights, and I really appreciate your transparency.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Again, for me, it's always about what can I give, not what can
Mhm.
I get. And so if this episode helps shift someone's perspective or
Yeah.
see something different, or even maybe even consider running their own virtual summit, first of all, I'd encourage you to come and speak to me
Yes.
because I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I did.
No.
And second of all, it's a beautiful thing, right? You get to share who you are with the world and you get to add value to the world using other people.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful and an amazing thing to do.
I love it. Awesome. What's the URL where people can find you?
You can find me at jwilliamscoaching.com if you want to visit my website. I'll
Okay.
also provide you with the link to the
Yeah,
masterclass
I'll put
as
that in the
well
show
so that you
notes.
can share that with people and all
Yeah,
of my social links as well.
I'll have that for sure. Thank you so much, Jay. I appreciate you. And good luck tonight on the master class. I know I will be keeping my eyes out for that replay because I'll want to watch it myself.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you. And
All
thank you for
right.
having me
Take
on.
care. Yeah.
Take
Thanks,
care.
folks. And I will see you next week on Leverage Your Podcast Show.